First Person Advisors is now a subsidiary of NFP, the fifth largest insurance broker in the world, combining local expertise with access to global capabilities and solutions. Learn more at firstpersonadvisors.com.
Had enough. On Election Day, vote Greg Ballard for Indianapolis Mayor.
The year 2007. Greg Ballard, a Gulf War veteran, retired U.S. Marine Lieutenant Colonel, entering another battle. Politics, throwing his hat into the ring to lead Indiana's largest city. Against long odds and a shoestring budget, Ballard beat two-term incumbent Bart Peterson and took over as mayor of Indianapolis in 2008. He moved the needle on life sciences, downtown development, green energy, and quality of place.
Culture Trail is amazing. There's really nothing like it in the world. I really want people who visit Indianapolis or live in Indianapolis to get out along the Culture Trail. You know, you got to build the kind of city where young men and women want to live and they want to raise their families, and where businesses want to come and recruit those sorts of people. So that's really what we've been doing. Everything we did was for talent attraction. You have to look at that and bring people in.
The 48th mayor of Indianapolis, military veteran, leadership consultant, and author, who now calls South Carolina home, Mayor Greg Ballard, my guest this week on the Business and Beyond podcast. Welcome to the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. I'm Gary Dick. Greg Ballard was born and raised in Indianapolis, the city he would eventually lead. He graduated from Cathedral High School, earned an economics degree from IU, went on to get a master's degree in military science from the Marine Corps University, and then served in the first Gulf War. Ballard jumped into the mayor's race back in 2007 with little name recognition and not a whole lot of money in the campaign coffers. But he managed to pull off one of the biggest upsets in Indiana political history, knocking off incumbent Bart Peterson. Ballard served two terms before deciding against running for a third. Last year, he and his wife, Winnie, decided warmer weather was calling their names, so they moved to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And Mayor Ballard, I'm sure that climate is perfect for you to get the sticks out and hit a few golf balls. Thanks very much for joining me on the podcast this week.
Well, it's great to be here once again, Gary. I've always loved doing your show, so it's really great to be doing your podcast now.
Yeah. Well, hey, so what are you up to now? I mean, you were such a high, really, and we'll get into this, but you're such a really high profile mayor on so many issues, and I know, remained busy, but is it all leisure golf? I mean, you're a big golfer. What have you been up to out in South Carolina?
Actually, I'm not playing as much golf as everybody thinks I am. First of all, I had double knee replacement 4 months ago.
Oh,
so that's been down for quite a few months. And since then, I've only played twice here in the last few weeks. So I only play like once or twice a week anyway. So I'm kind of doing some reading. I'm doing some writing down here, a lot of writing actually, on different things. So I'm enjoying it, but I like getting up in the day. I still work with Indy Women in Tech, as you are quite aware. But I do a lot of writing during the day, and to supplement that, to deepen the quality of the writing, I do a lot of reading.
I know lots of folks getting to an age where hips and knees go. You had double knee replacement. That's big surgery. But you just 4 months ago, and you've been playing some golf since then.
Yeah, it was difficult. Most people do one at a time. I did both
right
at the same time, and I tell you, without winning, I don't know what I would have done, because it was beyond painful the first few weeks. But it was about the 3-month mark that it finally started to turn a little bit, that I started to get loosen up a little bit. And I did my exercises and everything else, but now I'm at the point where my knees, for the first time in 20 years, don't hurt.
Wow.
So I have no problem going out walking. I have no problem going to the gym and doing weights or doing the bicycle or whatever without pain. And that is a relief. I mean, other parts might hurt a little bit, but not like my knees did. So physically, I'm actually in terrific shape, and I feel almost renewed and ready to go once again.
And I remember you talk about riding the bicycle. You were a big cyclist. I remember you'd get on the bike here in Indianapolis and go on big rides, right?
Well, we did a lot of rides in Indianapolis. We kind of created the bicycle culture, and I think that was really just pent up demand. They needed some infrastructure and some programming, and now I think it's still really big. And I appreciate the fact that the trails are still being built out quite nicely right now. So I think that was wonderful. I wanted to use them. I wanted to highlight them. As you know, when I would try to do something new, I would try to highlight it, and that just blew up with 4 bicycle rides a year, including the Polar Bear pedal, which was beyond silly to do, but it became a big hit, and we loved doing it. And so I loved I loved bicycling for many reasons. One, try to keep as best shape as you possibly can under the pressure. But as I like to say quite frequently, when you're going up a hill and your thighs are absolutely burning, you're not worried about the budget. So
Right.
You're just worried about can I get up this hill while my thighs are burning. And so that's it was a lot of stress relief on the bicycle. And me and one of my security guys, Chad Gray, we would always go out early morning at Eagle Creek. We'd get in there about 6 a.m. and do it. Well, the mist was still on and the deer were out and everything. It was just wonderful.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the pressure. Was that ultimately because you were very active, high profile? Was that ultimately just the stress and strain of the job? Why you decided not to run for a third term?
Well, I look at it a little bit differently. That might have been that. I think that played into it. I told people I was physically and mentally exhausted, and I meant that. And some people thought I was saying that to not run again for some other reason. But the fact is, I think the people deserve a mayor who's fully engaged all the time and is ready to do it physically and mentally. And at that point in time, after 8 years, I felt like I was tired, and I'm not sure I would have been a good third term mayor. I might have been, but I could feel that the energy was kind of sapping on me, and I wanted to. And I would have been fine if I could have taken a 2-year break and went back to it. But that's not how the game operates. So I just thought it was time to move on, and let the city have somebody whose energy level at that point in time was pretty good. I mean, my energy level right now is very high, and if I was in that position right now, I think I'd do a wonderful job. But at that time in 2015, I think I was done.
Your name was bandied about for other offices, including governor. Did you really give that a thought, a consideration to run for governor?
I did, actually. But again, they asked me to do some extraordinary things. Let's say that. It wouldn't have, again, at that time, it wouldn't have worked because I was tired. Right?
Yeah.
So I thought about it later on, but then I kind of mentally moved on. I mean, I got asked a little bit for senator. I really got asked seriously for the 5th district recently that now Victoria Sparks has. So we thought about that very seriously. Somebody from the White House came down and talked to me about that.
Really?
And
wow.
We thought about it for about a month, and with my old political team,
what was the determining factor there on deciding not to run for Congress?
Well, it was that's a great question. And let's just say that the federal government was in turmoil at the time, and as you know, I'm somebody who likes to get things done. I'm not a big pontificator, and I felt like Congress at my age, I would have been a 66-year-old freshman. And did I want to go through all of that as a freshman? Probably not. If I was maybe 20 years younger going through that, I could figure all that out, or would want to figure that out. But I thought I had other things that I wanted to do that I could get done that would be more fulfilling for me.
Yeah.
And so Victoria Sparks, as you know, eventually got the position. And I was actually just on a Zoom call with her with the U.S. Global Leadership Coalition because she's from Ukraine and she was speaking to that group, and I was on that group. And I think she's done a good job in there. So I'm happy for her, and I'm happy for Indiana.
You talk about Congress being in turmoil or politics in general. What's your take on the state of politics, in general? Especially at the federal level. I mean, a lot of people say it's just broken. It's difficult to get anything done because it is so divisive and so politically charged. Every issue, no matter what it is, makes it difficult to advance anything. What's your take on the political climate right now?
My take is different than most, and you have to hear me out just a little bit. Every year we do the Ballard Summit at the University of Indianapolis. The theme is always embrace the future. And I told them this year that we're not as divided as we think. We are divided at the federal level in Congress and the political parties up there. We are divided in the media. in the national media. I'm not sure, not local media, but the national media. But as I told students, look outside. You see anybody kind of arguing with each other when you take trips, go on vacations, when you walk out the door, when you walk out on this campus, do you see anybody arguing with each other? And no, I don't think we are as divided of people as everybody thinks it is. The irony of this is the two groups that are telling us we're really divided are the national media and Congress, which is trying to raise money, trying to divide us to raise money for campaigns. So those are the two groups, and those are the two least respected organizations in the country. When you look at the polling, right?
Yeah.
National media and Congress are polled both below 20%. And so, and yet these are the people we seem to be listening to. You know, when I talk to my Democratic friends and some of even my Republican friends who I disagree with clearly on some of these issues, we're not at each other's throats. We disagree. We kind of talk it out, but we're not saying, I hate you. I'm never going to see you again. So I think we need to be a little circumspect and a little skeptical of the national media and Congress, who's trying to raise money on the division, telling us that this is how we really are. Because I honestly, on a day-to-day basis, I don't see it.
Yeah. Okay, take us back. November 6, 2007, you shocked the Indiana political world, defeating the incumbent Bart Peterson and what many describe as certainly one of, if not the biggest political upset in Indiana history. Take us back to election night. What was running through your head as you were seeing the results come in and you find out that, hey, I'm going to be the mayor of the city of Indianapolis?
I was calmer probably than most people thought. You know, the political people and then some of the local media, not a lot of them, but like, oh God, now we won't know what to do and all this other stuff. I mean, it's kind of funny in that regard, but I mean, I wasn't a young pup at that time. I was in my 50s. I'd spent a whole career in the Marine Corps, been to war. I mean, it's not like this was going to overwhelm me. At least I certainly didn't feel like it was. I had good people around me all the time. I was very fortunate for that. But that particular night was really, really fun. I've written a chapter about this for something that I'm going to do in the future. And so I recall it pretty well that I was euphoric because just the nature of our campaign, as you well know. And it was David against Goliath, and David won again. But it was a lot of fun to see at the Old National Center in that room. Nobody was there. And then when the results came in at 6:00 and they saw, oh my God, look at these numbers. And the room started to fill up over the next 2 hours. And that was actually kind of fun to see. Lots of my family were there, so that was great. I remember when I got the phone call from Bart, as you would expect, he's very gracious and a very dignified guy anyway. And so he was terrific. Said, let me help you if I can, and all of the right things there. And then I went up and gave a speech, and I always joke that very short speeches. You know, I never gave long speeches anyway. I said later on. I said it's really easy to give a speech when 100% of the people cheering for you at the top of their lungs all the time.
Right.
I mean, it was a wild scene. Wild in a good way. People cheering, and then they. So I appreciated it. I appreciated that what went on beforehand, and now. Even though lots of the people that were there that night probably didn't go out of their way to really help me, but the fact that they were there tonight and say, "Hey, I want to help now," I took to heart, and the transition was terrific, probably textbook. And so I was happy that evening. And I thought we just had to turn the page and start governing.
Yeah, well, you were a very active mayor. Green energy security, trails, bike lanes. You can go on down the list. Quality of place was a big focus. As you look back on the things that you implemented, that you led the charge on, is there one thing that you're most proud of, or you think is most significant in terms of your legacy as mayor?
Well, there's a few what I might call physical things, like the sewer work was huge and saved $1 billion for the ratepayers in the area. You know, the bicycling, the robotics, all of those things were terrific, and how we kind of changed the culture in that regard. But I honestly, I'm pretty open about this when I say this. I have so many really, really talented folks, young folks, and I think we created a new generation of leadership. I think our team really created a new generation of leadership. And you look at where they are now, like Ryan Vaughn, right, and Brandon Brown, and Jason Cloth, and Greg Wilson, and Mike Huber. Just and I could go on about 10 more
Those
people.
are some big names, right? Yeah.
Look at where they are and what they're doing and how meaningful they are right now in the city and the state. And they all were they worked in our administration and kind of got their name and built up their reputation in our administration. And now seemingly everybody wants them to be a part of their organizations too, because they're all pretty smart people, really smart people, and they're doing terrific work around the city and the state.
Yeah, well, when you came into office, the economy, certainly nationally and here in Indiana, was really going in the dumps. I mean, that was, a really a dire economic situation, a recession, basically. How challenging was it to come into office? A political novice, certainly had not served before, but facing all these challenges and then the economy and the dumps as well.
It was terrible in the economy. The Great Recession was the term, right? And it's kind of funny. My comptroller at the time, David Reynolds, a wonderful guy, said, "Don't worry. At about 11 or 12, we'll start to come out of it, and the revenue will start to increase in the city again." Well, by the time I got down 15, that never really happened because of the delay and everything. So my successor, Mayor Hogshead, he was able to get a lot of that money, but he struggled through it out. That said, I think we did a good job. The trajectory of where we were going was horrible. And a lot of it was the Great Recession, obviously. I thought we had changed some spending patterns in the city also, and we did. But one of the things, going back to what you said, being very proud of, was during the Great Recession, we tightened up a little bit. It was very hard, and people beat you up because, you're not taking care of my program, you're not doing this, and oh my God, you look like a monster. How can you cut this? But things had to be done. Things just had to be done for the overall good. But we actually cut the deficit for the city, cut the debt of the city 2/3 in those 8 years during this very difficult economic times. We went from about $330 million to about $110 million by the time I was done being a mayor. And I was really proud of that I was able to leave plus the fiscal stability fund that we set aside when we put the sale of the water and wastewater assets to citizens. That was $80 million we set aside. We still had 78 there in cash for my successor at that point in time, plus the other reserves, and the state owed them $50 million too, and all that. So I think we put them in pretty good shape financially. Plus, we took the debt down dramatically. So the Great Recession was very, very hard on the city and other cities across the nation, but we didn't lay anybody off. We worked through attrition and then brought it back up where we could as the money came back in.
Yeah. You're very, very much a supporter of alternative energy and energy independence, energy security. One of your high-profile initiatives was certainly bringing electric vehicles, Blue Indy, the electric car sharing from a French company. Very high-profile. Ultimately, it didn't work out. Is that a regret, or what's your take on that experiment?
I'm very much into energy security, and it's playing out as we speak in Russia and Ukraine. Over half the money that Russia gets is from oil and gas exports. We've been fighting in the Middle East for 50 years over energy. That's why our troops are in the Middle East, to protect the oil supplies. So all of that was involved in that decision. I was happy with Blue Indy. Frankly, I don't think most people might say otherwise to that, but this was a huge European conglomerate saying, we want to invest into Indianapolis. And I think when we mess with that, somebody who wants to put that much money into your city, and we have to be careful how we treat them, frankly, because other conglomerates around the world are looking at that city now. Are they going to be receptive? So we have to be careful about that. The other piece is the system was designed for 200 sites, and I was gone, so I don't know, but it never got to 200 sites. It's kind of stopped at 100. I think it worked at 200 sites, and why it stopped, frankly, I don't know. I haven't asked that question yet, to be honest with you. I will probably here shortly, but why they did not allow it to go out to 200 sites. And I know there were also private companies that wanted to use Blue Indy on their campuses around Indiana because the cars had a range of about 150 miles. And so working between the campuses would have been perfect for them. And I know they wanted to use them. And maybe because of what was happening elsewhere within that program, they didn't do that. So I know what that means. I know when private companies don't necessarily want to go against the grain and get on the wrong side of anybody. But there were a couple things that probably contributed to them eventually going away, not necessarily because the program itself was incorrect. I think for whatever reason, they didn't go out to 200, and the private companies went away. And so I think that's probably more involved with them not being there than anything else.
Yeah. You mentioned a global conglomerate, global. You were a big fan of putting Indianapolis out on a global stage, felt it was very important to shine the spotlight on Indianapolis far beyond the Indiana borders and really overseas. Talk about that focus. I mean, you tried some, I thought, pretty creative things, among them cricket, right? Do I remember that right? You were and some people said, why in the world would you do that? But I know I've talked to, or had talked to employees at Lilly and some of these, Cummins, and some of these young people who were all over that. They thought that was the best idea ever because of the popularity of cricket and what it might mean, bring to Indianapolis.
Cricket is the second largest sport in the world. And if you look around, at least in America, the people who play cricket are medical, engineering, and IT. So I built those fields. It's more than just the cricket pitches out at the World Sports Park. I mean, there's lacrosse and hurling and all those other sports too. But the cricket draws talent. I did all of that to draw talent. I mean, it was a talent attraction. I got the idea because Cummins had a cricket pitch down in Columbus to attract engineers from South Asia. That's the whole point of all of that, was to draw talent into the city. The point of becoming more global is to draw talent into the city. There are so many hilarious stories about me traveling overseas to double the number of sister cities, but some of them came back. And emphasis was a direct result of our creating a sister city relationship with Hyderabad. There's no question about that. Sometimes it works. Sometimes you just want to create relations.
Yeah.
It may not be a good time to say it, but our relationship with Hangzhou in China has been very close. And they put up a large Indianapolis display in their public library in Hangzhou. I mean, these things matter to me in the long term. I'm always thinking about for the city. I'm thinking about talent attraction. For the world, I'm thinking about global peace. And I think those are the things that matter to me the most. And that's why I did what I did. And we went to the sister cities that I thought made economic sense for Indianapolis, and that's they were chosen specifically for those reasons. So, and I visited. I'm probably the only mayor who ever has and ever will visit all of the sister cities, and we had a lot of fun doing it. Got beat up a little bit for it, as you know, but I thought it was the right thing to do.
Yeah, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, RFRA, was certainly an extremely hot button issue, a divisive issue that brought a lot of attention, negative attention, to Indiana. You came out very forcefully on that issue, and some would be surprised that a Republican as yourself would do that. But you did talk about that and why you did it and kind of your thoughts, because that was a very critical, very important time, certainly not just for Indianapolis, but for the state of Indiana. The business community rallied and got through it. But talk about that period of time and why you decided to come out and do what you did.
Well, there's a lot of moving pieces to this one, but again, ultimately, this is about talent attraction. I'm always trying to expand the tax base in the city. That's the whole point. You can't have all these services unless you continue to expand the tax base in the city, property tax, income tax, and all that. RFRA was a direct shot at that. People in the state house at the time, I don't know if they do yet, they don't understand the millennial talent and the young talent that wants to come. They now move to a place where they want to live, and where they want to live was an inclusive global city. That's what they want. And they are not going to tolerate anything that goes against that grain. So if you want the talent to come into the city, which then the businesses will come after that, then you have to look at that. You can't expand your tax base if people are leaving the city, and if businesses are leaving the city, and people were not going to tolerate what RFRA was. Again, I've really put my thoughts together on this on paper, and the state house I don't even know how this happened over there. I mean, I have a pretty good idea, but you have to understand legislators, right? They will do what somebody tells them to do. I would not, on any issue, whether it be a health issue, whether it be a solar issue, whether it be a religious freedom issue, or whatever. But they look to certain people and say, should I vote yes or should I vote no? It's not like they're all reading the bills and studying the bills themselves and the impact. They were told many times before that bill was passed what the consequences would be and how the language in that bill, which if you read the bill was innocuous. I read it. It doesn't say anything really. But that bill, when combined with the rest of Indiana code, was discriminatory. Now, they're going to dispute that, but the fact is it was. It absolutely was. And it played out pretty quickly. And, the questions were asked of serious people in the know, people who could have changed this. If a gay couple goes out to have dinner in Indianapolis, can they be denied service? I will tell you, nobody in the State House would answer that question. No one would answer that question. There's a reason they would not answer that question. Some of them knew the answer. The other ones did not know the answer because they'd never been asked like that before. But they had been asked by me and others in a particular meeting, and they did not like having that question asked because they didn't know. But we knew, other people knew. And that's why this turned into what it did, because people did know the answer to that question. Some wanted that question to be, yes, they could be denied service. Most people did not want that, because there's no way in the world I'm going to sit here and tell you that Republicans wanted to be discriminatory against gay people. I am never going to say that, because that just is not true. But they passed the bill that literally they did not know what they were passing. And but they did it anyway, even though they were asked not to. And then you saw 10 days. That was by far the hardest 10 days.
Because I remember very, very well. How difficult was that? Because there was so much, firestorm coming into Indiana from all around the globe, companies under pressure, et cetera. How bad did it get?
It was way worse than what we've been told. And there are people to this day who will say, see, not much happened. See, it wasn't that big a deal. It was a big deal. I had mayors calling me up saying, Greg, I love you, man, but no one is going to be allowed to travel to the state of Indiana. I was calling conventions right and left because they were dropping off. Every major sporting event, other than the Final Four around the corner, as you know, every major sporting event was leaving. Every one of them.
Wow.
Businesses were leaving. And what was being said publicly by others, when I was talking to business leaders, they were telling me something quite else. Some of the people were spinning it, but business owners were telling me something else. I think our tech community would have dissolved quite quickly if that thing had stayed in place. As you found out a couple years later, Salesforce increased by 800. But I would tell you, if River stood as it was, I think Salesforce would have left the city.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how bad this was getting. And all I could think of was all those tens of thousands of hospitality workers who were going to lose their job because of this bill. And I'm going to tell you, to this day, people don't think it was that big a deal. It was a big deal. And it was while we were salvaging what we could in the middle of it, and we were able to salvage lots of it afterwards. But while it was happening, it was extremely scary, because all I could think about was, I got 40 years of previous mayors on my shoulders right now who built up the city to this point, along with the great nonprofit sector, the great business sector in Indianapolis. We built it up to this, and this bill was going to take it all away in a matter of weeks. And that's what it looked like to me.
Wow. We're going to have much more with Greg Ballard. Growing up in Indianapolis, a military career that took him around the globe. And what's next? That's when the Business and Beyond podcast returns.
First Person Advisors is now a subsidiary of National Financial Partners, the fifth largest insurance broker and consultant in the world. Develop your total reward strategies all in one place with the combination of First Person's local expertise and NFP's global resources and integrated solutions. Learn more at firstpersonadvisors.com.
Welcome back to the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. My guest this week, the 48th mayor of the city of Indianapolis, Greg Ballard, who is now comfortably sitting in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Mayor, I really appreciate you taking the time to join us. Hey, I want to go back. I had some great stories in the first half of the podcast here on your time as mayor, but you are an Indy guy. You grew up in Indianapolis, went to school, high school in Indianapolis, Cathedral High School. What was growing up in Indy like for Greg Ballard?
Very cloistered, actually. I always tell people I kind of lived, when I was a youngster, 2 blocks by 4 blocks where I lived at 3131 Arthington Boulevard. And I didn't really travel. I mean, I didn't even leave the state until I was the age of 16. And that was only to go to my brother's wedding in Toledo for a weekend. and then I didn't leave the state again until I was 20.
Wow.
We were not an upperly mobile family, let's put it that way. And so it was very small area that I lived in. And I went to school, obviously, but other than that, I just lived in a 2-block by 4-block neighborhood. And I didn't think there was anything else in the world at that point in time.
Yeah, well, that's certainly changed for you. Again, you graduated from Cathedral High School, got an economics degree at IU. Then you joined the military, right? You joined the Marines. Why make that move?
Well, that was quite the move, to be honest with you. At that point in time, I was looking around. You have to remember, this is the 70s. And all I saw around me was people who were graduating from college, getting a job, working for the same company for 40 years, taking 2 weeks of vacation to Florida. And they were going to do that, work 50 weeks, Florida 2 weeks, and you're going to do that for 40 years, and then you're going to die. And that's what life looked like to me. And I said, I don't want to do that. And there's a whole story about me not wanting to join the Marine Corps. I had 90 hours done at IU, and I was kind of floundering. Lots of people know this. I was not exactly, even though I was a smart kid, I went to Cathedral when it was an all-male high school. Right. I got a full ride to Cathedral academically. I tested.
Wow.
So I go to IU, and I've got all this freedom, and I'm doing nothing with it, and I'm doing nothing productive with it. And I wasn't a bad kid. I wasn't in trouble, but I just wasn't.
Yeah.
Either. So about 90 hours ago, I went into the recruiting office in Bloomington and to talk to the Army, Navy, and the Air Force. I don't know anything about the military. Nothing. Not really a military family at all. But I thought, I'm not talking to the Marines, but I'll talk to the other 3 services to see what would be going on. And I had 90 hours done. And as fate would have it, those other 3 services were busy. The recruiters were busy, and the old Marine there was not. And he was standing in the hallway, and I'm standing in the hallway. And I'm thinking, don't talk to me. Don't talk to me. He comes up to me and he goes, and he's an old drill instructor. Says, "Hey, want to talk about the Marine Corps?" I'm not exaggerating that. It scared me to death. Absolutely scared me to death. I went into his office, stayed there for 2 hours. You know what he told me? He told me, get back to school, graduate, come on as an officer. That's what he told me. 15 years later, I am the commanding officer of a recruiting station based out of St. Louis. None of my recruiters would have told them that.
Wow.
Told me that.
Yeah.
But he told me that. And that's eventually what happened.
Wow. That is a great story. 23 years in the Marine Corps. You gave much, obviously, to your country. What did that military service give you? What did it mean to you to serve in the military?
Oh, it gave me everything. I know I need structure in my life, and the Marine Corps obviously provides structure. But the other part is you have to perform quickly in the Marine Corps, and I was not performing quickly. I did not. IU is such a wonderful place. I did not take advantage of all the wonderful stuff down there. I wish I had, but I didn't. But in the Marine Corps, you either make it or you don't, and they don't care if you make it. If you don't make it, they just move on to the next person. So I wanted to make it. I wanted to be something. I wanted a paycheck. I wanted to serve my country, and I wanted to do all those things. So I better perform. And thankfully, I had enough capability to perform. I found my wife through the Marine Corps. Obviously, my first duty station was Camp Pendleton, California. I met Winnie out there. My first 3 years in the fleet, as they call it, after schooling, I went to Okinawa, Japan, and holy cow! Now my world is opening up. Right. A few years later, I went back to Okinawa on a full year. Brought Winnie over. Traveled all throughout Asia on her own. Oh my God, this was unbelievable. So it was terrific. So I was able to travel quite a bit. Obviously, eventually did some schooling that had me travel. Obviously, the Gulf War in the Middle East. My last duty station was in Europe, where in Stuttgart. Obviously, the family, my kids were old enough at that time. They traveled all through Europe. They were 11 and 12 when we went there. They were 14 and 15 when we came back. And so they traveled. It was great. They could go around the world on their own, and they have.
Yeah.
So I was very appreciative of all that. So I just had a much wider view of the world than I did in my little 2-block by 4-block neighborhood as I was growing up. Yeah. And I was able to put all these pieces together and do a lot of studying. And so my whole worldview changed, obviously, in those 23 years.
Yeah. Well, hey, I want to ask you about Winnie, because you two, a couple very visible to see you at many events while you were mayor, but you met her while you were stationed in California. How did you meet? What do you remember about your first date?
Well, that's a great question. She was working at the bank where I was banking. I was a second lieutenant. I had like $5 in my pocket. I was kind of a paycheck guy at that point in time. And so she was working there, and I kind of noticed her, and I can't remember exactly how I got the impetus to ask her out, but I was kind of seeing somebody else at the time. But I went to lunch with her, and I went out with her a couple times too. And when I went to Okinawa for that 6 month with my unit, when I came back from that 6 month pump over in Okinawa, I came back to her, and we have been together pretty much every day since. And I got married 6 months later on January 2nd of '83, and we've been, it's 39 years now. But I met her, was kind of dating her a little bit when I went to Okinawa, came back, went straight to her, stayed with her ever since. That's the short version of that.
Yeah.
And, been a pretty good decision.
Yeah, absolutely. How did you talk about what Winnie has meant to you, to your career, and her support? And I know it's a special relationship there. How would you describe it?
Well, it is special because she's always been very supportive of what I've done. I've been supportive of her too. When she was trying to get her degree at Camp Lejeune, and somebody was trying to talk her out of the accounting degree that she wanted, and I went to the administration of the university there locally, and I said, "No, wait a minute here. She put all this time in, and you're not going to give her these few classes to look." And they relented. I was a nobody captain in the Marine, but you know what? They listened to me, and they gave her the classes. And then she became an accountant, and it was kind of funny. It's a great story. As soon as she got that accounting degree, I stopped doing the taxes. I stopped paying the bills. I stopped doing everything. I mean, I haven't done anything. I haven't seen a paycheck in 35 years. And it's just that she does all of that stuff completely. And of course, when you run for mayor and do all this other stuff, she's like, really? but she was very supportive. Wasn't sure early on. She had a lot of people talking to her when I was running for mayor, especially after I won the race. Lots of people came to her and say, you have to do this, and you have to do this, and you have to do this. I said, honey, you do what you want to do. You want to stay home, you stay home. You want to travel with me, you travel with me. You want to be this or that, and you do anything. You do what you want to do. And I think that calmed her down. As she got into financial literacy quite a bit when,
right,
with Bank on Indy and doing taxes with the IRS, who was terrific to us. Kate McKnight was terrific with us from the IRS. So it's just, we just kind of been together. It's a pretty unique relationship. And I heard, I don't know how many times I heard that she was by far the most visible first lady that anybody ever remember in Indianapolis. And I thought that was terrific. It was kind of funny because I had an unofficial rule. Again, when you're nobody and you win the political race, all the political people come out and say, do this, 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 you have to do this. And one of the things they told me is, don't bring your wife. No one wants to see the wife. They want to see you. And I said, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
I said, we're empty nesters. The kids were at IU at the time. And I said, as I made an unofficial rule, which was, if it's after 5 or on the weekend, if you want me, you're getting Winnie. And that's just the way it is. And so she was with me everywhere on those times. And then a year later, when I would go to lunch somewhere in Indianapolis, people started asking me, where's Winnie?
Where is she? Yeah, right.
So she started going with me during the day too, where it was appropriate. And so she was kind of with me all the time. And everybody knew that if it was just a normal event, like a lunch or something like that, Winnie was coming with me. And people liked her. I mean, she's a very likable person, obviously. And people liked having her around, and they liked talking to her. And so I think it kind of became a special relationship, I think, in the city, because people noticed it. When we did our 25th wedding anniversary was the second day of my being in office. So we didn't have a 25th anniversary, but on the 30th, we held a vow renewal, and like 180 people there. Wow. And then we started doing vow renewals in the city market. Stevie Stays, the great director, former director, that asked us, can you do vow renewal for everybody else there? And we started doing that for a couple of years. I hope they're still doing that. But she was just a special, and people really liked her and liked seeing her. And 39 years, will be 40 come this January.
Congratulations on that. Hey, you mentioned you do, doing a lot of reading and writing. And one thing I want to ask you about is that real focus. You touched on it earlier, but on energy security. And you wrote a book, Less Oil or More Caskets, right?
Right.
And I remember we talked about that on the show one time, very provocative title, but it's something, did that interest in energy security begin with your service in the first Gulf War, or where did it come from?
You would think it would have, but it really did not, because at that we knew we were over there fighting for oil. It really disturbed me that nobody in Washington would say we were fighting for oil, but that was about nothing but oil. All that said, that did not pique my interest in any way, because there was no solution. But now there is a solution. If 70% of the world's oil is used for transportation, cars and trucks, well, there's a solution around the corner here. And I know we can't do it tomorrow, but tomorrow's getting here pretty quickly. I've been driving these types of cars since 2016, and it's pretty obvious what can happen in this regard, and pretty quickly too. I think within 20 years we can do this thing, and we can get rid of our dependence on oil. It's not, and I don't see this from the American point of view. You got to understand, I'm looking at this from a global point of view. The world can get off the dependence from the Middle East and Russia, where so much of this energy comes from. And look at what happens in the Middle East and Russia. How are they funded? I mean, we actually protect the oil. We spend $80 billion a year annually, about 15% of the defense budget, to protect the oil supplies in the Middle East. That's what we do. We've been doing it for 50 years. The average American has no idea we're doing that, but we do that. We protect the oil that funds the terrorism that's used against us. We protect the oil that funds the terrorism that's used against us. We actually do that, and we've been doing that for decades. Look at what Russia's doing. Over 50% of Russian revenue is oil and gas. They don't have an army. Of course, it looks like they don't have much of one right now either, but they can't do these things. They can't have a nuclear arsenal. They can't export terrorism. They can't do all the things that they do without oil and gas revenue. There are 11 time zones of mediocrity if they don't have oil and gas revenue. My point is, make it local. Make local national energy, not just us, everybody. And then it's a lot more peaceful world. And why do I want a peaceful world? Because who has to intervene when it's not a peaceful world? America. It's our troops. So it's important for us to make sure it's a peaceful world, and there'll be a lot more peaceful world if each country had their own energy. I don't care if it's nuclear, hydro, solar, wind, batteries. I don't care what it is. But it'd be a lot more peaceful world if everybody had local energy.
Final question for you, Greg. What's next? Is it more writing, golf, politics? You interested in maybe dipping your toe back in?
I get asked all the time to get back into politics. It's kind of funny because I wasn't very political, as you well know, but that works, right? I mean, people want somebody who's not overly political, just wants to get the job done. So I get asked quite a bit. I don't think I'm going to go in that direction. I will continue the reading and writing. We're comfortable here in Myrtle Beach, but we're not going to stay. I'm pretty sure we're not going to stay. We'll stay at least another year or two. And then I will either move back to Indianapolis, which we'll do that, or we're going to go further south into probably the Orlando area. And so it'll be one of those two things. But I'm looking at moving back to Indianapolis. I always tell people I want one more significant thing to do, one more significant opportunity. If I can make a difference, then I will do that. And I'm hoping that's in Indianapolis. If not, we'll probably go further south down to the Orlando area, but because we have friends and family down there. But I like it here in Myrtle Beach, but I just kind of, I want to do, like I said, I got new knees. I'm renewed.
You're ready to go. I like it.
Ready to go. And I'm hoping that's in Indianapolis, but if it's not, we'll just move further south and come back and visit routinely, because we've been down here in Myrtle Beach for a year. I think we've been up 5 or 6. I know at least 5 times, maybe 6 times up to Indianapolis already.
Very good. Well, Greg Ballard, it's been a real treat to have you on the podcast. Thank you for joining us. Thanks for your service to our country, our service to Indianapolis, your service to Indianapolis as well. Very significant indeed. And we look forward to that, whatever that next chapter might be. But Greg, thanks very much. And best wishes to you and to Winnie.
Thanks, Gary. I appreciate it very much. Always love doing your shows.
All right. And thank you for joining us on this edition of the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. It is a weekly conversation with achievers in business, sports, entertainment, and beyond. And you can download all of the episodes of the Business and Beyond podcast and catch Indiana business news 24/7. All you have to do is go to InsideIndianaBusiness.com. I'm Gary Dick. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.